Now, how are you going to decide which classes go to which subsystem or which classes go to which component? Now, these are design decisions, and any design decision would be driven by two main forces, the coupling and cohesion. We talked about coupling and cohesion before in 2250 when we talked about low-level design. But also in a high-level design, any design, whether it's high level or low level, is driven and constrained by these two forces, coupling and cohesion. So just a quick reminder, the coupling is the dependencies between the different components. Okay, low coupling means low dependency, which means pretty much when we indicate dependency means that when you change one component, do we need to change other components as well based on that or not? So in a low coupling, when you change one component, you don't need to change a lot in other components. In high coupling, when you change one component, you need to change others in order to reflect that change. So tightly coupling is more risky because it requires multiple, like any change in one component will cascade into multiple changes, and every change will introduce a risk. So the goal is to minimize the coupling, so reduce the coupling as much as possible. We cannot eliminate it altogether, otherwise the components need to work together, right? So we cannot eliminate all the coupling, but we just need to minimize it as much as possible. Here, for example, here's a database component, and we have map management, resource management, and incident management. All these components depend directly on the database. So that's 1, 2, 3 dependencies on the database component. So that's high coupling on the database component. Now, how can we reduce the coupling? A very common technique of decoupling or reducing the coupling is to introduce an intermediate layer or an intermediate component. Okay, so you want to reduce the coupling of the database, introduce another layer, like call it storage, for example, and that's the only component that will interact with the database. So that gives us lower coupling on the database. Now you may wonder, well, we still have dependencies on the storage. Now that component was only introduced for the sake of decoupling the database. The database is the risky one. This is the one that we anticipate is going to change. And if there's direct dependency on it, means that every change in the database would mean change in the 3 other components. Okay, so the risky component is decoupled by introducing that intermediate component, which is its only job is to reduce the coupling. So it is not, there is no significance or risk here. It's not going to change on its own. Okay, it will only change if there's a change in the database, the storage layer would change. So that's one change depending on that instead of 3. Okay. So in that case, we have lower ER, lower, no zero coupling. Still, there is coupling, but it's lower than here. Okay, now the cohesion is the dependency between the elements within a component or the classes within the components. And in order to have a good cohesion, we want to maximize the cohesion, we want to increase the cohesion. So we don't want to have a component that has unrelated elements. So components with related element has low cohesion, which is not a good design. But a component that has high cohesion, so high dependency between the classes within it, is a good design. Now, something like this, we put everything. This is a decision subsystem. We put everything within that subsystem. This is a low cohesion because there are some, there's not a high dependency between all the components. Okay. Now, in order to increase the cohesion, we split that into two smaller components. So you can see here, there's high dependency between, or high relatedness between the classes, and all of them are related to the planning. There's high dependency between these classes, and all of them are related to rationale. So we introduced two subsystems that has better cohesion, but we introduced a coupling as well. So oftentimes the cohesion and the coupling are conflicting. So we want to maximize the cohesion and minimize the coupling, but sometimes we have to decide which one is more important. Okay, so when you increase the cohesion, you may increase the coupling as well. And when you reduce the coupling, you may reduce the cohesion as well. So you need to decide which one is more important to you. And like it's a trade-off. It's always a trade-off. All right, so that's all about subsystem decomposition. When we meet in the class, we're gonna talk about it some more. So see you in the class.